It's still hidden. But as far as we understand, it was the telephone call to Kevin Rudd when Bush was convinced you have to have China there. And Kevin Rudd speaks fluently Chinese also, which has helped him grasp, that Australia is really not a Western country, it's an Asian country. But they're slow at understanding this. And this was the G20 meeting. And how will the world develop? How will the world really happen in the future? I was planning to show you that. I shall see if I have all the data here. For advanced users, you can see a little how I do this. I go down to projections. I take income per person with projection. Take a little time to land, and then I take time down here. And then I take, to expand this, I do it like this. And then I expand it in the other direction to get the future there. And now I'm going to run a race. I'm going to run a race from 1800. And I invite United Kingdom, the old leader of the world. I invite United States. I invite Japan and China. And then I want to have Sweden also. I put Sweden there. We can put India also. And let me do it a little more like this. Perhaps just here. India. China, Japan, Sweden, United Kingdom, United States. You can see already in 1800 that Sweden was very close to Japan and China. In fact, I used to say that Sweden is the Japan of Europe. Very late in its development. A pine forest nation which was not invaded by someone else, but maintained its independence and learned from others, and were quick to learn from others. And then eventually managed to develop its own technology. Whereas United Kingdom and United States, you know the history of them. I shall take them up here. Now we shall see what happens in history here. In history. Oh, I have to put trails on this one. Sorry, we run them out like this. In the middle of the 18th century, United Kingdom is still ahead of United States, but they are catching up. The other countries were taken away. Sweden is trying to reach these groups, but they are closer to Japan, and Japan is starting to rise. China had the Boxing uprising. They are dominated by Europe, India, and China, and in the next year almost nothing happens down there. But Japan is coming. Can you see how Japan starts to catch up? And here United States is now richer than United Kingdom. And in the Second World War, disaster in Japan, and they come back there, and then they catch up. This is the big Japanese catch-up, and India and China is still down there, and no one thinks that the world would be different. But this is what happens. Mind you, here comes Deng Xiaoping, and there follows India. It's quite amazing. Now this is on logarithmic scale. But it really is on logarithmic scale we measure economic growth. Because we know that you can't grow your economy in absolute terms. It's always an improvement in relation to what you had last year. So we measure it in percent. And what you measure in percent, you display in logarithmic. You expand the low incomes, you compress the high incomes. You see, I have nothing to point with here. I wasn't... I want you to see the financial crisis. Can you see just on top there? You see there's a little blip when it falls down. That's the financial crisis. 2008. It's a very small thing. Lot of noise. The important thing is not the crisis, it's how fast you grow in between them. The most important for Ukraine is during the good year how fast you can grow your economy, because the problems will keep coming. Hopefully not so frequent as it has been in the past for Ukraine. But they will come. But it's a good year you must show the ability of growing. Huh? And this is what China, in China you can't see the crisis. The crisis, some of these steps here are a little small, not even in India. They are autonomous economies now. They are producing so much for their domestic markets. They have so much government money, $2.4 trillion to booster the problems with. They don't enter into crisis with debt like Ukraine and United States. There Ukraine comes in the same group as United States. They have managed this way. And when will they catch up? Well, already almost now China have the same size of their economy as United States. But that's not so interesting. To me, interesting is the average income per person. And you see, the speed with this is going, when they will hit this one who doesn't grow so fast any longer, it's about 2048. In the later part of the summer, more precisely the 27th of July. It is my 100th birthday. So I made a stupid projection instead of showing you that there is of course an enormous uncertainty range. But if things continue as they have been doing the last 20 years, we will see a complete catch-up possibly within my lifetime, undoubtedly within your lifetime, Andre. So it's quite amazing difficulty to realize this. So where is Ukraine now? Or where is Brazil? I would like to challenge Ukraine with Brazil. Because Brazil was a country engraved with structural and institutional problems of all sorts of kind. They were very bad at collecting taxes. They were very big inequity. Because some got good resources, others did not get it. But they changed things, you know. So we put Brazil there and we take Ukraine here. And then we see what has happened with these two countries. So you see, Ukraine came up here, was on par with Japan up to 1960. 50 years ago, Japan and Ukraine was like this. Today, Japan is up there. Ukraine did it to here. It was too slow. This was why the Soviet economy was not making a catch-up. But the change caused a catastrophe. You went up, you went down. You are here now. Brazil has overtaken. You are the Brazil of 2006 about. So you are some few years behind Brazil. And you can make it like Brazil. You are part of this. You can see the direction here of the growth. With this growth, you can join this group, which is a pretty big group of emerging economies here. You see Indonesia, you see Russia, you see Mauritius, you see a lot of the problems down there. Congo. That's where you have the problem. These countries are not growing. Whereas countries like if I pick Ethiopia, it's a hopeless African country. We go back and we look at Ethiopia. Look, Ethiopia has a very fast economic growth, an even steeper slope than Ukraine. They are doing fine. There's a number of African countries that the last 5 to 10 years start to behave like the Asian tigers did 40 years ago. They're called African lions. From a very poor situation, they are coming into fast growth. They have the benefit not so much of a very highly educated population, but they have several sets of natural resources that are needed in the world. And they go into deals with that, which are profitable. And countries are getting better also. Health is getting better. So this is more or less the world for the future. These countries will not be so fast. The OECD countries, the richest countries, will grow with only 3, 4, 5%. And the middle income countries here, with wise leadership, they will catch up in 20 to 40 years. The question is what will happen down here in poverty. Some will go others will be in deep problems down here. I think I leave it there. Andrei accused me of being an optimist. I deny that. I say I'm not about emotions. I'm not a pessimist, I'm not an optimist. I say this is possible. This is highly possible. But it puts an enormous constraints on the energy. We won't do this with fossil fuel. Or if we do this with fossil fuel, we will do it at an enormous risk of climate change. I won't run that data. That's another say. Why do I say? Am I a climate activist? No, not at all. Am I a climate researcher? No. I was even a climate skeptic until about 10, 15 years ago, when I was convinced by scientific evidence. And the problem with the climate is that there's a high probability that we will get a dangerous climate change. It's not proven. Only one thing is proven. If we want to avoid that risk, we have to do something before we know it for sure. It's a quite heavy political situation. Huh? It's a quite heavy political situation. The E. coli outbreak in West Germany just killed 28 people. The nuclear power in Germany hasn't killed anyone. And they decide to stop the nuclear power and to continue with organic food. Why not ban organic food if it killed 28 people? No, I don't think you should do that. You should just make it safer. Thou shalt not eat raw sprouts. Eating raw sprouts was a stupid idea. The Chinese, the Japanese, the Asian people have never eaten raw sprouts because you get bacteria in them. You fry them or you cook them and then you eat the sprouts. Some of these inventions from organic foods are like nuclear power. They are pretty dangerous. All things new which come up are potentially dangerous until you see that risk and then you save it. Huh? Now, what I'm concerned about, I'm not for or against nuclear power. What I'm concerned about is that we don't have a global energy discussion. We need a global energy discussion because the climate we are in together. And today there's only one or two governments which are really serious about the climate change. And to me it's shocking that it's the Politburo of the Chinese Communist Party that is most serious. Personally, I don't like communism. It's not evidence-based. I don't like it. I like the freedom of speech. I like the freedom of choice. I like the open societies. But I see that the developed, mature democracies in West Europe and North America does not deliver on the climate change. It's too far away. The democratic system can't handle it. We vote for prices to drive the cars in 2 years from now, 1 year from now. We don't vote for the grandkids. And this is very serious. So why is China so serious? Because climate change will stop China from becoming big, beautiful and shining. It's a Chinese problem. Because the river, you just saw on the flooding they had last week, you know? The river water, they have to have it under control. They can't take climate change. There are so many people on such a special land that climate change will destroy China. So it's a national issue. And they invest heavily in solar power. They invest both on the basic research, the applied research. They help a company start, and companies are successful. They go for wind, the really good environmental energy sources we would like to have. And they do it very seriously. Whereas Merkel put an import ban on solar panels to protect the inefficient German solar panels. This is a very strange behavior. So what I would like to see is a more fact-based view of it, because all these people, they will eventually have more energy. I think I should show you this one, which I have for energy. I have here. I'll end with this one. There's some stupid thing with this. There we are. Seven billion people in the world. 1 billion live in high-income countries like West Europe, North America. They have a home full of electronic equipment. They can fly abroad for holidays. 1 more billion. Almost everyone can afford a washing machine. This is where Ukraine is positioned. We have 3 billion that can have electric light at home. We have 2 billion that still rely on firewood. The discrepancy in wealth in the world is enormous, but there is not two groups of countries. There are people living on all sorts of levels. We will be 2 billion more. Now this is the energy we consume. 12 units of fossil fuel. It's oil units, and I don't calculate kilowatt or everything. People pretend they understand it, but very few physicists understand it. So I just have units of carbon. These people here use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 each. These 2, Ukrainians not. You use a lot of energy, partly for the industry and partly for inefficient use of it. So it seems that your main challenge is to make more efficient use of the energy you already have access to, rather than going for more sources. Here is 1 unit each, here half a unit each. We will have 2 billion more people in the world, they will end up there. That won't change the energy need so much. The population issue is not the issue here. It's when all these people will move to higher energy. Because they all want washing machines. They all want washing machines. They're going to move in this direction. And you saw the speed of that change. So we need to take away 3 of these. The number 1 step is to achieve the same good life with less primary energy, to be more energy efficient. That's the number 1. Number 2 is to replace 2 to be green. We'll still use fossil fuel. We'll still fly the airplane as far as we understand with fossil fuels. These people, independent how they need a lamp, because otherwise population growth won't stop. It's strange, electric light in the evening stops family from having children. I think TV is better than condom even on stopping people from having sex. And then you need to add the green there and the green there all the way, and then everyone can get a washing machine. Because energy need, fossil fuel will decrease, we will have more green energy, and this is what we need to solve in the future. We do not have a serious discussion about this. It's a complete failure of West Europe and North America to deal with this. It's very strange. And I have the privilege of going around. When I meet intellectual people from India and China, which are highly educated physicists, I don't know. My flight is, it's here in my house. Protest first. When I do these lectures, I do enormous simplification. Very, very simple to get over. I can have made some major mistakes. Please come forward and correct me. Or comment that this is not really a good reflection.
Well, that's the way first of all, I'd like to thank you. I just have a question. When you talk about income per capita and how it's growing, you use linear format, which means just number, right? Linear, not logarithmic, which means, if I get it right, because I'm not really professional, we don't really see the disparities inside the countries. So if we compare 1918 and today's world, we don't see that.
No, it's.
So is it true? And how can we see that if the world in 200 years ago is.
And this is what you want to see. No. The logarithm is quite defensible in a very easy way. If you earn $1,000 per year, earning $100 extra is a big thing. Wow, I got $100 extra. Now I'll buy iron sheet for the roof of my house. If you earn $10,000 per year and you earn $100 extra, what's that? It's a parking fee. Huh? So it means that what extra you get is very much related to what you already have. And that's also why logarithmic makes sense. Huh? So it's a relative what it is. But the disparities within countries, you can't see on a country average whether you put it logarithmically or this. Then you have to look at it like this. Here I have $100, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000. It's 4 zeros difference because these are household money. And it's the distribution in the world 1970 of income. So there were people living in this end and some living in that end. And then the world has changed like this. The poor are still as poor as they were. And the number of them is more or less the same. The world population has grown, so the percentage in deep poverty has decreased. But the amount is more or less the same. The richer have got even richer. And you said that there were some Ukrainians also here. They are perhaps behind here, you know, they are too rich, so they are outside there. And this is the world, how it has changed. Now, the most important thing is that we see this middle portion here are just coming into the world economy. 3-4 billion people are coming into the world economy. This is very important. If you have something to sell in the world market, the customers is expanding enormously for many products. There is one industry that counts 7 billion users. You know which branch of industry that counts 7 billion users? Telecom. Telecom industry, they count everyone. I'm going to talk on Tuesday next week to Ericsson, having a meeting for leaders in telecom industry. And one of the leading won't come. He's in Africa. I won't miss this opportunity. The poorest countries in Africa is the opportunity to cover for cell phones. There's an almost amazing things. You know. Whereas other industries said, oh, there's 1 billion customers, 1.5 billion customers. There are so many there. Now, if we look at certain countries, you can do some interesting thing here. We take away the world, we take it back to 1970, and then we pick, we pick China, China rural and China urban, and then we take United States of America. United States of America, 1971, didn't almost have an overlap to China, but people in the urban areas in China was richer than the rural areas. So there were some poor families in rural Mississippi that had the same income as the Politburo in Beijing. That means how honest the Politburo in Beijing was. Or how incompetent, I don't know. Anyhow, this is what has happened. Not so much in the 70s, not so much in the 80s, it's now that it's happening. Today, this is data to 2006, today 40 to 50% of the population in the United States of America has a counterpart in urban China that has the same income. Rural China is also hanging on quite well, whereas in India, you can see in India, urban India is poor and rural India is even poorer. Rural India and rural China is as poor. Urban India is poorer than urban China because in India everyone is free to move to the city. So you have slum. Whereas the Communist Party in China said you're not allowed to live here, go home, go home. Yes?
The question is, are you using actual figures or purchasing power figures? Because it's important for this kind of charts.
This is the data set from Xavier Salih Martins, and he is using the income, and then he has the log normal distribution from the income distribution in the countries, which it takes. The income distribution in countries are made from surveys guided by the World Bank, which is done by 10 to 15 years intervals.
There are two differences. If you use actual figures, $1 in China may cost a different amount in...
No, everything is purchasing power.
Okay.
Everything is purchasing power. But the problem with purchasing power is that China changed its purchasing power. Because within China, you know, what you pay for something in Shanghai is very different from what you pay it in rural Guizhou.
That's exactly the question.
And the other thing is that some stuff you buy, you need a lot of exchange rate money. The richer people would have a higher proportion of their consumption would be imports, and less would be internal in the country. Whereas the poorer part of the population would spend almost all their money in purchasing power. Economics is a headache. I like deaths and births. They are very clear, you know, this person was born now, and this person is dead now, it's very clear. Public health is much more easy, it's like more solid. But it has been taken care of. The problem is that we still find countries then like Congo. Ukraine? I haven't seen the Ukraine figure here. Ukraine, we have to go back to 1990, and we take Ukraine there. Yeah, looks quite nice. Oh, like an ice cream in the sun. Oh, it's terrible. It's sad. I shouldn't have shown you. How cruel. But this is partly, your question is good, because this is partly modeled. It's not measured data of income. It is surveys that show the distribution. And the distribution is almost log normal in all countries. So if I take away the China rural, we would get the Ukraine that went the wrong way, that became much broader, and then started to move upwards. Does this pattern correspond to a general impression that Ukraine, from being a relatively Soviet lined-up country like this, decreased their economy, got much more inequity in incomes, and then start to move forwards maintaining the inequities? More or less this. The interesting thing is that if you portray Germany on top of this, you can see that quite a lot of the Ukrainian population correspond to part of the German population. So we have these enormous overlaps. That's why it's so bad to look too much on country averages, because it makes you, for instance, in investments and in capability, Had I done this distribution of education, you would be ahead of Germany. Just imagine that. If I would have the distribution of years in school in Ukraine, then immediately when I said that, you complained about the quality of the education. Yeah, but I mean, there are many basic parts of it which still is good, and the fact that you have the same education, more or less, like this country, but you have an income which, instead of being there, you lack a zero. You lack a zero on the paycheck in this country. Because if country was really making use of its potential, it should be 1 0 more in the end of the paycheck. And that's even when taking purchasing power into account. What we would like to have is, of course, the real measurements of countries, but they are also they're difficult to translate. Okay, I think there's one more question there. Yeah.
May I ask a question? So I would like to know if, in your opinion, there is any recipe of success for Ukraine to give us a push in our economic growth. Is it to start making children?
Certainly, yes.
My children are fun. I can recommend it. I have 3 of them. This software was done by one of them. I get the credit. He did the work. It's very nice. I cannot recommend. I don't think foreigners can recommend. We can make observations. And the first observation is that Ukraine is an outlier. The capacity of the people does not correspond to the performance of the country. This is fully clear. And that, of course, the conclusion would directly be the institutions doesn't function. The judicial system doesn't function. The civil society is not strong. The media is not free and courageous. The stock market is not rational. The investors are not performing optimally. But all these things interact with each other. A bad judicial system makes journalists less courageous. And less courageous journalists maintain a bad judicial system. A weak civil society, make politicians perform worse and become more populistic. So as we were discussing earlier, it seems that it's more difficult to have gone in a wrong direction, which we must conclude that central planning in Soviet Union was the wrong direction. The distance you covered was good in many aspects, but the direction was wrong. And going back and then going in another direction seems to be more difficult than starting from the bottom and going in that direction directly. It seems to be more difficult to rebuild the judicial system than build it up. And my way of looking at that is sometimes it's more costly to rebuild a house than to build a new house. And you are rebuilding a house. You are rebuilding, you are reshaping. There's so many things you have to reshape. And which one of them is more important than the other, it would be very unwise from an outsider to say.
That's a question. You've been mentioning the Soviet past, and we can also apply Soviet to Chinese past in a way, right? So people's past, People's Republic past. And in a way, what you have been saying, like the Central Committee of Communist Party is taking a long-term decision, and the country is industrialized, is definitely tightly connected to their Soviet past. So when we talk about Ukraine, we would normally think that we have all problems here because of the Soviet past. Now the Chinese have the edge because of their socialist past. They do. Centralized economy, central decision making, lots of discipline. You stay in your country, don't move to my city, which I like.
Yeah, it is. I mean, people who look at China and India say, China has a paved road and a big bump ahead. They have a paved road, they drive fast, and they have a big bump ahead. How would they manage a modern society without democracy and freedom and pluralistic, India has a bumpy road, but no big bump ahead. It's bumpy all the way, because they have the free press, they have a vibrant social, civil society already, and it seems like that's very vulgar. Don't cite me on it. There's an optimal period for communists. There's an optimal period for communists, and it's both how long it should be and when you should have it. It's very good. Lenin was right to 50%. He said communism and electricity to the whole country. Yeah, electricity was good. Central planning is very good to roll out an electric grid and put light. That's what Mao Zedong did. To put all children into school, to get basic education, basic health. But then that system was not able to handle the first success of its result. It was not able to handle it. Beside all the suffering of the political oppression, that on its own is enough not to like the system for me. You can't make this sort of jokeful comments because the sacrifices made and the sufferings made by so many was enormous, But the central planning in a more wise way. I've been in Cuba, for instance, and you can see that Cuba did a number of things which was relatively good, but then they failed to improve the economy completely, and they became stagnant in the country. And now finally Raúl Castro had to take away the central planning. But my view is that that's done 20 years too late. China went to market economy 78, Vietnam 1990, and Cuba 2011. And that seems to be how long the communists have been in power. Because the one who won the revolution with this idea, they will keep it until the end of their life, it seems. So it's a system that cannot change. We are happy and proud to see the Swedish system continuously changing in a way which was unbelievable 10 years ago. I bragged about two things today. Our Minister of Finance, which is from the right-wing party, I've never voted for him. So I'm not talking about someone I thought is my friend or anything like that. Now, I don't really like all of his policies. But he has a ponytail down to here and a golden ring in the air. That's quite tough finance going to Brussels, you know. And he's doing well. We have the fastest economic growth in OECD. He managed this crisis in a way that make others Minister of Finance cry. He's really competent. He's really competent, you know, within that political context he works. And the bishop of the Church of Sweden, we have a religion which is as dominant in our country as you have. There's almost one religion throughout the country, the Lutheran Church. The bishop in Stockholm, she lived in a lesbian relationship officially with a 3-year-old son. Beat that if you can. You know? And that's not the economic dimension. That's not the health dimension. That is the freedom dimension. That is why impose terrible treatment of people because of another sexual orientation. What stupid idea was that? I was a medical doctor in Sweden for 10 to 15 years. Never ever did one patient tell me that they were homosexuals. What a bad doctor I was. What a bad doctor I was. Because 10%, 5 to 10% of my patients were homosexuals. But they never admitted it. Now we have managed to do this. So this ability of changing, you know, and it's interesting that the better gay laws you have, the more thriving economy you have. It's quite interesting when you look at focus. You know, the most libertarian, you get sort of creativity.
If I may hear about the gays, 10 years ago, a friend of mine just gave me a book written by a Russian composer. And when Gapminder was young, he was advised by his father to be afraid of 3 things: said fascists, communists, and homosexuals. He wasn't homophobic, neither am I. But the problem with homosexuals in this country is, and you will confirm, that they still keep on living as a diaspora. And diasporas, as you know, live in a much, much better way than the titled nations or titled communities. So, what you say in Sweden, the achievement, this openness, it's reciprocal. It's both ways, you know. People tolerate homosexuals, homosexuals tolerate people.
Yes.
That's a very important thing, because you are still young, and once you proceed in your life, you'll remember about your Gapminder and me talking about this, because you will realize, especially boys, that all of a sudden your superiors fall in love, literally, with somebody at your expense. And what Swedes are doing, they openly admit being homosexual, right? So if I'm a homosexual and I bring another guy to work with me and we are homosexuals, then people think one thing. But if I bring another guy without declaring openly that I'm homosexuals, yeah, people think that I've just cherry-picked the best guy, which is not. He's just my lover. This is what is happening all over places where I mean, homosexuals have to go their part of the way. Would you agree with that?
It's interesting how fast the change comes. From not accepting it, not talking about it, tolerating it a little like this, if there was a diaspora, the change came in less than 10 years. The Conservative government had 2 ministers that are openly homosexual. There's no issue. They go to official dinners with their partners. What's
that your advice to the young?
No, but it's keep changing. The country must keep changing. And you know yourself what changes can be achieved in the next 5 to 10 year periods. That's not for the outside to say. Some is more difficult, some are easier to do. South Africa has a very free law on homosexuals because they were fed up with racism, they were fed up with discrimination, and when they did equal rights for everyone, the homosexuals became part of it. Yes, but it was such a dramatic change. So they were in the Constitution, so they just put an extra line because they were changing everything in the Constitution, so they added that. So they are ahead of you by that. Other countries, it may be more difficult. I'm just mentioning that countries keep changing and keep doing this, which is indeed productive in a way. And it's a non-issue. It's became a non-issue. I go to the birthday party of my grandchildren, and then I play, and they have the other friends are there with the parents, and I discover, so that child has 2 mothers. So that's a non-issue. No one talks about it, that they are going to come and they are lesbian. It's a non-issue. and everyone accepts it now. And then it's not an activist thing, and that still exists, but it's astonishing how fast things can change, and how they will continue to change. So what you need, the answer to you is, you have several different things to change. Grab the ones where you think you can make a difference within the next 3 to 6 years. If you start a thriving business and earn money for yourself, your employees, produce things for your customers and pay tax to Ukraine, do that. If you want to be a judge and you go through the legal system and you don't corrupt yourself, do that. You start a non-governmental organization with a website, do that. Be a journalist, do the changes where you think this is what I can do in the next period of time.
I love your saying about the performance of the country, and the capacity of Ukrainian people does not correspond with performance of the country. And this corresponds very closely with another piece of your lecture regarding the performance of the institutions.
Yeah.
Are there any statistical means to measure the performance of the institutions? Because definitely here we do feel that speed of reaction. So normally our institutions are reacting only on short-circuiting.
No, I should say like this.
How do we measure it?
You can never understand the world or the country without statistics. And you can never ever understand the world or the country with only statistics. There are so many crucial things that cannot be put in numbers. Gender equity is one thing. And functioning of institutions is very typical. Amnesty International, an organization I like, in their annual report they don't put statistics. They put issues in each country. This is the issue in this country. This is the issue. I think Ukraine has a lot of issues with its institutions. And it's very difficult to put them in numerical. I told you when I was buying a new apartment in Sweden, I was taking a loan of my house. It's within minutes, within less than 10 minutes I get the loan, because the land entitlement that I have is computerized, and the person in the bank can look at it and they see that they credit, they give me the loan. It's like this. Very fast and efficient. And there are several things involved in that. And by the land entitlement being so well defined for 300 years. We have my wife's family who have a farm, a normal-sized, middle-sized Swedish farm, The map for that is from 1721. And it corresponds exactly with the map the neighbor have and the other neighbor have. And this is computerized. Every square meter of Sweden, we know exactly who has owned it since 300 years back. That makes it very much more difficult to be corrupt. That makes it very much easy to be a journalist, to show that someone tried to be corrupt, because people try to be corrupt and are corrupt in Sweden. It's not that we are honest. It's very difficult to be corrupt in Sweden. You have to be very, very intelligent to manage. Almost no one managed, because we grab several people every year for this. So this is more or less where it is. And those institutional things you cannot measure. Neither can an outsider tell you. One of these things may be a major obstacle, the other may be a piece of a cake for the young generation to change it and to say, you are fed up with this, we don't want this any longer. We want to change the legal system if that's the most important. So that's the change. But it's very good to have peace for 200 years. I strongly recommend that. That means that you have not had change. So it's also, don't be frustrated too much of your country's situation. You've gone through really horrible thing. It's difficult to understand. The only thing I can, as an outsider, studying the history of your country, is to realize that I don't understand what this must have meant, what you have gone through. And the loss of identity, you said the loss of trust between people, We know exactly who we can trust, but that neighbor, we don't trust them because 1895 they stole our cow. They still remember that, So they don't. But the other two neighbors we trust because they do. So it's a stability which is enormous, But this turning around, you cannot compare that with a country who has been so lucky in the history as we have. We've just been lucky. But remember, that doesn't affect how you young people are. You are as capable as the Swedes. You are as capable as that, or even more, because there's a sort of naivety of being in a very rich, very well-functioning country. You become naive and you become so to whereas you taking it in the right way, growing up in a tough country like Ukraine, studying here, working here, makes you realize what is said to be and what is really is, and then you can decide how you will work from that, and you will be more functioning in the world and be able to do business in the world in almost a better way than the Swedes. I think we should end there.
There's one gentleman with an issue. Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah. All right. On your behalf, if you just let me, I'm quite sure it's been a very enlightening experience. I don't know the gentleman in the white shirt, but if we talk about, I'm not an economist, institutionalized economy. There was a book which was presented to me, you probably have heard the name, by Alexander Auzan, who is now in charge of President Medvedev's economic advisory board. And that's just a copy. If you want, I can share this copy with you. It's about institution. And for the first time in my living memory, this author has been mentioning organized crime as a part of our institution. Actually, he approached me to write a book on VAT as a means to as a means to actually oligarchize, so to say, a place, which was quite a striking idea. So, on behalf, I would like to thank again Mr. Vice President of the University. All of you, please follow us on TED, on Глубинное бурение, on First Channel, and I'm quite sure you have, Женя, наверное, у университета есть свой портал, да? Шевченка. Ну, я с этого видно, да? So, and I'm quite sure that this will be on your portal, so on behalf of our little team, I'd just like to thank Dr. Rosling for this very, should I say, instructive and amusing experience that we had. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.